In this video, I want to share with you a solution that's like having an extra $250,000 in retirement savings. Okay, so the way that this works is if you can generate an extra $833 a month, which is about $10,000 a year in income, then that's like you've saved an extra $250,000. And as you can imagine, it's a lot easier to generate $833 a month income than it is to save and put away that $250,000 in retirement savings. And we hear a lot about how retirees don't have enough money saved for retirement, and we hear very little about doable solutions. That's one of the main reasons I started this channel. After 15 years of trying to figure all this out, after we stumbled into early retirement, like many people have done and many people end up doing. We found solutions, but it took a lot of time, many years. And it took a lot of trial and error, which at this time in our lives, most of us feel like we just don't have a lot of years to waste trying to figure all this out. If focusing on financial solutions versus problems interests you, then hit the subscribe button because that's what this channel is about. Now, let me get back to the $833 a month. Sometimes I talk about this generation of income as a solution for retirement, and I get comments, yeah, but how can you make the money? So we're going to talk some about that in this video, but I also just want to make it really clear the numbers that are involved with this. $833 a month versus that $250,000, and how this math even works. Like, how did I even come up with this? This equation is derived from traditional retirement planning and investing that says that you're going to withdraw 4% a year, around 4% a year. That can vary. I could talk all day about that, but let's go with the 4% a year. That's the most popular withdrawal rate, and that starts out at 4% the first year of retirement, and then it's adjusted for inflation after that first year. But if we take that 4% that very first year and we multiply that by the $250,000, then that comes up to about $833 a month, or around $10,000 a year. Now I'm rounding on all these numbers just to keep it really simple. So if you were withdrawing from that $250,000 a year, that would give you that $833 a month. So if you generate that $833 a month outside of your retirement savings, so this has to be outside of traditional retirement savings, then it's like you had that extra $250,000. Now, I get that everyone doesn't want to work until they're maybe 90, lifespans, if we live to into our 90s, we don't want to be working, but a lot of people are retiring in their 50s and 60s, and a lot of people get bored. And this is a great way to look at things and a great solution, certainly for 60s, 70s, and even 80s, for income generation, for people that haven't saved enough for retirement, or even for people that like the stimulation of making money. So how can you make this money? Okay, there's two different ways that you can do this. You can make this money using either your skills, if you don't have the financial wherewithal, or you can do it from your financial assets if you have a foundation in your retirement savings. Okay, so let's first look at skills. Let me just throw out a few possibilities that I've either done or I've seen in working as a financial coach with various clients, helping them figure out retirement solutions. Okay, so consulting, for example. Some people make $500 a month doing B2B consulting. Other consultants might make $100. Consulting pays very, very well, and by the time we retire, we usually know a whole lot about 2 or 3 things. So consulting is an excellent solution. It's one of my favorite solutions because there's very little cost involved and because you can make really good money. Other examples might be tutoring. So if someone has been a teacher, then they could tutor students. If they tutored group students at one time, maybe a group of 2 or 3 or 4 students, then they could scale their income on an hourly basis. We'll talk more about that in a second. Another skill that might be used is something like video editing. A lot of people love to edit videos and do something creative like that. Design of any sort, garden design. There's so many different things that you can do here. And of course, all kinds of technology skills are highly marketable today. There's a lot of ways you can do this. You can do it direct to people that are going to hire you, or you can do it through an online service such as Upwork, although they do take a cut. That's one reason I love consulting, because you can just go straight to your customers. Now, these are examples of ways that you can make this money from your skills. Okay, so let's put some math to this. I love math. Math tells the truth. Okay, so let's say that you're making $25 an hour. That's pretty doable these days, especially for someone that has advanced skills. By the time that they're older, they do have advanced skills, right? In some areas, for sure. Okay, so at $25 an hour, you could work just over 33 billable hours a month, or about 8 billable hours a week. And I'm saying billable because sometimes this whole being an entrepreneur thing is a little bit not explained quite like it really is. Like, you have to spend time doing your accounting and taking care of your banking and reaching out to clients, maybe some networking. But again, that goes back to why I love the consulting model. But some ways that you do this require very little outside work other than the billable time. So let's think in terms of billable hours. So $25 an hour, billable hours, about 33 hours a month. And that's 8 billable hours a week. That's like one day or 2 mornings, and if you have another half day to manage your finances and that type of thing related to your business, that seems pretty doable by most people. Okay, let's go up to the next level, $50 an hour. Then we're talking about 4 billable hours a week. That's like one morning or one afternoon, one evening. Okay, if you can make $100 an hour, which is certainly not uncommon. I've paid dog trainers well over $100 an hour. I've paid handymen, although I tend to not pay quite that much for a handyman, but handyman, $100 an hour. There are a lot of people that charge $100 an hour. That's 2 billable hours a week. And then at $200 an hour, which is also very, very doable, especially if you get into the B2B space where you're a business and you're consulting with businesses or you're doing work for businesses, then that would be 1 billable hour a week. Now, let me give you another example of someone that I recently paid a very high dollar. It was over $100 an hour, and it was for someone to come into my house and help me with technology issues that I was having with my computer. Most of us, many of us have acquired technology skills, and a lot of people also have worked in the technology industry. So this can be, just another example. Okay. Now, those are all examples to inspire you and get your juices flowing. I love brainstorming about how we can make retirement work instead of focusing on all the problems with retirement. But that should all get your brain juices flowing about what you can do as a solution. Now, let's shift over to financial assets, because you could actually do something skill-based, but then you could also use your financial assets to increase that income, that $833 a month. So what could you do with that? Okay, well, I've done another video on the best retirement portfolio that you'll want to see. I'll put a link to it in the description that expands on this. But let's go ahead and look at ways that you could increase the income on a very traditional portfolio that is maybe invested in something like the S&P 500 index, and a fund that invests in the S&P 500 index, and maybe IEF, another type of ETF that invests in or mimics the bond, intermediate U.S. Treasury bond issuances. Okay, so as SPY and IEF are very traditional, typical investments for most retirement portfolios, something like that. The yield on both of these is extremely low. Okay, so as of this recording, the S&P 500 yields only about 1.3%, which is crazy. The average on that has been closer to 1.7, 1.8%. That's the long time average on that. I love to look at averages and say, where are we now in relation to the averages? So we know 1.3% is very, very low because the S&P 500 is expensive relative to the earnings that it's getting. So if we consider that, and then maybe the income from IEF, that intermediate term bond index fund, is around 4%, 4.2%, something like that, 4.25%. As of this recording. Now, of course, by the time you see this, it might change. But I'm explaining all this as the foundation for what I'm going to say next. Okay, so those are very, very traditional investments. Let's say, though, that you decide you're going to increase the yield on your portfolio by 3.3%. Okay, 3.3%. Then that would make up that $833 a month. There are a lot of different ways you can do this. If you're not familiar with it, I suggest you really, really embrace your financial well-being and learn about it, research it. After you've done that, if you want to, you can hire a financial advisor, someone that will help you accomplish this. For example, probably, 15 years ago, I read about a financial advisor in the New York area that gets about a 5% yield, that's income, like dividends, and interest from bonds on portfolios for her clients, and then she hopes to achieve another 3% in capital gains over time on average. That's so incredibly reasonable. Now, she was a financial professional, and I do think that sometimes it makes a lot of sense to work with a financial professional in making this happen if it seems completely unachievable for you and it's something that you can afford, because it's not inexpensive to work with a financial professional. But if you're going to get the amount of money that you make above what you could make, then maybe it makes sense. And a lot of research goes into figuring out the best stocks to own that are high yield, because the higher yielding assets are, securities are, then the riskier that they are. We got to pay up for that, right? So it's really important to diversify and understand what you're invested in and do your research. But I wanted to share that as an example because 3.3% is a reasonable increase in yield these days. If you're in the S&P 500 and it's yielding 1.3% and you can increase that by 3.3%, that's still really reasonable. That's in the 4.5% range. So this is something that is doable. It's not a crazy thing. Now, there are also, of course, diversified bond portfolios that could yield more. There are other strategies you can do. I personally like selling covered calls on our ETF portfolio out of the money. That significantly increases the yield. There are just so many different things you can do. There are alternative investments that you don't hear about much. There are slightly alternative investments, as I call them, like REITs and things like that yield more. Now, super, super important, I got to say it, and it's that I'm not recommending any of this. I believe that it makes sense to invest in assets when they make sense, when they're inexpensive and or they're providing good value or good return. I'm not someone that just says, oh, this is yielding, 5% right now, so I should go buy it. I'm really into analysis and data and figuring out investments rather than just following what someone you hear maybe on a video or someone suggests to you. So super important. I'm not recommending any of this. I'm saying these are different ways that you can accomplish that $833 a month. All of, I haven't done handyman work, but most of the stuff I talk about here, I've personally done. I've invested. our portfolio for higher income. I do consulting, I do coaching, I do things that generate income, and that was the solution that we found after we stumbled into retirement. Remember, above all, retire certain.